All right, you guys ready to put some seat rails in? What the heck? So here we go. Okay, so the two seat rails, I cleaned them up with a wire brush, slapped some paint on them, looking a lot better. Referring back, my last video was all about putting the brake lever bracket on and the cable guide, e-brake cable guide. So now it's all about locating the seat rails themselves. And I think the first step, because I've replaced the cross member, is to get this notched tooth bracket, which is actually two parts. You've got the notched tooth thing and it's bolted to a bracket. Now note that there is like a stop, and this section here is the bottom, right? So it goes down in the floor pan and the notch goes on top. Now the notch should line up with this. It acts as a stop, if I remember right, to keep that from coming all the way out. Lifting up and above, I think, is the proper way to describe it. So let me kind of mock it up and we'll take a look at it. Okay, yeah, this is a little tricky because I'm having to hold this in place because you're kind of fighting that spring. All right, so it's on like the second position. So that tooth is in between the tooth bracket, right? And then what I was referring to just a while ago, actually that's a guide to keep everything inside of the bracket that is welded to the cross member. I hope that makes sense. So what you're kind of do, you're fighting, because the spring tension is kind of keeping it. When I let it go, it's going to try to spring away. Now, I think if I find a small enough clamp, I can clamp it like this and just verify that I've got everything in the right spot. Now, what I do know for certain is this rib on the floor pan does line up with the outer seat rail. And then, of course, you're going to have that seat rail hinge bracket underneath. But this will give you a pretty good start as far as positioning. Also, you want some space between your adjuster lever and the longitudinal. And then over there, it gets even more involved because you got all that other stuff in the way. So let me try clamping this bracket and we'll take another look at it. All right, so yeah, clamping the bracket, it helps a little, but it kind of gets in the way, so you can't really slide that in. So let's look on the back side. So I've got a tooth partially engaged. I mean, the main thing we're trying to do here is get alignment as far as the seat rails are, you know, on a cross the car plane, if you will. I guess that would be X or Y. I don't know. Anyway, so, you know, I'm pretty confident this bracket is in the right spot. So I'm going to go ahead and mark it. And then I'll be able to, first I got to clean that primer off because that is not weld through. And then I'll reclamp it and weld it in place. Now, let's look at these brackets because these are the original. I pulled them off. They do have spot welds from the factory, which are tiny. And there's quite a few of them. But note that the metal is a lot thicker than the cross member. So I'm really debating whether I'm going to do rosette welds. I think it's advisable. I'm going to need to take the tooth part off and remember the orientation, because I believe there is an orientation as far as what's top and what's bottom. I think the curved part is the top. Now the bottom of this one is pretty beat up because I had to grind off remnants of the floor pan basically and the cross member. So I think it behooves me to at least get like 3 fairly large rosette welds in there. So I'll put it on a drill press to do that, because again, it's pretty thick metal. And I may even bevel that so I get a good amount of penetration and sort of a flare on the top of the rosette weld. So yeah, first step, mark it, clean it up, and then I'll take these apart and drill out for 3 or 4 rosette welds. And then I'll also, once I get them in there, I'll run a bead down the sides, a seam weld, and they come like that from the factory, because whenever you try to pull them off of the cross member, it's not easy. It just will massacre the cross member. Okay guys, so what I did is I went in with a 1/4 inch bit and drilled the main hole, and then followed up with I think it's 5/8 just to make like an offset, a bevel. And because with that 1/4 inch, with that thickness, it's like trying to get a rosette weld down inside a tunnel, and a lot of times you just don't get good penetration with those thick walls. So I'm going to try that and see how that works. I think 3, as long as I get good penetration with 3 of them, I'll be in pretty good shape. And then of course go down the sides also. Okay, so I put them back together. So let's call this the tooth adjuster and an anchor bracket. Because if this tooth adjuster actually sits a little lower, especially if you've ground off some of the bracket, so I think you want that, because you could potentially mount that bracket too low and then not be able to get the tooth adjuster back on it. So I think and what I'll do is I'll just put a couple, maybe 1 rosette weld and a couple of spot welds around the sides just to kind of fix it, and then I'll take that off so I can weld that anchor bracket better. Okay, those welded in very nicely, and the offset thing with the holes worked really well. I was able to get good penetration and a nice rosette. It's super solid. So now you just kind of confirm your fitment by engaging that tooth, and then you see how the guide works. Now, so you still have to press it down because the spring is going to be fighting you, but now we're ready to locate the seat hinge brackets. And that's what these are. So you got the plate and then the hinge. And I don't know that there's any orientation to these. The folds seem to be uniform. There's like a little fold there. So maybe a little greater distance on this one than this one. I don't know. I think the contour is uniform. So I don't know that there's a front and a back. So let's grab a couple of those, put it in on the passenger side, and we'll start looking at alignment. So go ahead and pre-mount the hinges. And I'm using some cap screws, 6mm cap screws I just happen to have laying around with a flat washer. Now note that the one in the back cannot be very long, because that will keep that seat rail from going all the way down when it folds up. I got a little bit longer one up front. Again, I'm recycling used screws. Also, when you preset them, these holes are slotted. So what I would do is preset them in the middle of the slot. That way you can adjust forwards or backwards. You'll see where that comes into play later. So with the hinges preset, you can set your plates down in there, and your target area for the hinges on the seat hinge bracket is a little bit of a flat spot right in the middle. That's where you want to weld that hinge. Also, you want the seat rail to be parallel with the longitudinal, and you can take a measurement there. But note that getting the plate or the seat hinge bracket located is not as critical, and you will be able to correct some slight adjustments before you weld the hinges themselves to the plate, right? So when I'm pretty happy with the location of the plate, I'm going to mark the 4 corners on each one, take it and drill out for spot welds, rosette welds along that flange, and then I will take some sheet metal screws and screw them down to the floor pan to weld them in. Welding the hinge itself will be the last thing in this whole process. So I got the bracket drilled out for rosette welds. I've got some 1/8 holes drilled in to get the sheet metal screws in, and I just need to shoot the underside of the bracket and the floor pan itself with weld through primer, and we'll be able to weld them in. All right then, so yeah, I just basically put a sheet metal screw in the 4 corners, did the rosette welds in the middle, then did a little line of spot welds, seam welds, before I pulled the 4 screws. That helps hold those corners down when you pull the screws out. So yeah, those turned out nice. So now this is a tricky part. So let me put the seat rail in place and we'll talk about that. So I just put some weight on the seat rails, trying to get that hinge planted. Also, I measured from the edge of the outboard seat rail to the longitudinal, turned out to be 3 1/8. And I've got the tooth engaged, right? So everything should be the way it is. And then again, you've got a adjustment on those slotted. So if you need to mess with how much of that tooth engages or whatever, you've got a little bit to play with. So basically what I'm going to try to do is get back here on the back of the hinge and just get a little spot weld, just enough to hold them in place. It's a little tricky because you don't want to weld on the middle. You've got to go to the outer edge because the middle pivots, right? So a little spot weld there, little one there, and hopefully that'll hold them in place where I can unscrew them and then weld them really good. So yeah, those welds are pretty big and lumpy, but I think you want them that way because you want this thing to be, you know, tacked down really well. Note that the position on this one, it's almost hanging over a little on one side, so I couldn't really grab that knuckle on that side. But I mean, it's got like 4 good spots on it. This one here turned out a little bit better. I was able to get both the knuckles on the back side and a couple more big ones on the front. So I think this is solid. So that's pretty much it. Just put the rail back on and then adjust it, to where it goes up and down as far as disengaging and raising and lowering, and that's pretty much it. I'll put the rail on and do a couple of tests, and then we'll wrap this up. All right. So yeah, it goes, adjusts all the way down. It's a little stubborn going all the way down. It's probably because that screw in the back is a little bit long. So bottom tooth, a little stubborn engaging, but as soon as you go up, everything seems to be working well. I mean, it's nice and solid. So yeah, I think that's successful. I mean, driver's side, just more of the same, pretty much. So I hope this was helpful, guys. It's a little tedious, but you might as well get it right the first time, because it'd be a pain in the ass to relocate those plates and stuff. So subscribe, leave me comments. Let me know how I screwed up. We'll see you on the next one.